Welcome to my new screencast. Yesterday I started a series, a small 3-part series uh, in Acts chapter 1, 8 through 11. Yesterday's post was called The Great Commission, but it was titled Jesus' Last Day on Earth. But I talked about the Great Commission in Acts chapter 1, verse 8, where he says you'll receive the power of the Holy Spirit, and therefore you shall be my witnesses. Then I went to Ephesians 5, where Paul talks about don't be drunk with wine, for that is dissipation, but be filled with the Spirit. We have to keep being filled with the Spirit in order to witness correctly, and in order to gain that continuous power that we need, and boldness that we need. And we know that the power of God is behind the gospel, but we also know that we are indwelled with the Holy Spirit, but that Holy Spirit needs to be kindled all the time. And that's what Paul is talking about in Ephesians. That's Ephesians 5, 17 and 18. So check the post out, and you'll understand what I'm saying. But today is the Ascension of Jesus Christ, verse 9. But let me read the verses first, over here on the left, starting in verse 8. But you will receive power when the Holy Spirit has come upon you, and you shall be my witnesses both in Jerusalem and in all Judea and in Samaria, and even to the remotest part of the earth. And after he had said these things, he was lifted up while they were looking on, and a cloud received him out of their sight. And as they were gazing intently into the sky while he was going, behold, 2 men in white clothing stood beside them. They also said, Men of Galilee, why do you stand looking into the sky? This Jesus, who has been taken up from you into heaven, will come in just the same way as you have watched him go. So the ascension of Jesus. Jesus in the past, a few times, just in the Gospel of John, talks about it. So John 20:17 says, this is when the old woman was clinging on him after he was resurrected. Just after. Stop clinging to me, for I have not yet ascended to the Father, but go to my brethren and say to them, I ascend to my Father, your Father, and my God, and your God. And then John 3, when he was talking to Nicodemus, no one has ascended into heaven but he who descended from heaven, the Son of Man. And a few chapters later in John 6:62, what then if you see the Son of Man ascending to where he was before? Heaven is where he belongs. But he left us a helper, the Holy Spirit. So this lifted up is an interesting word. He was lifted up while they were looking on. Can you imagine the scene? Jesus is on the ground with them, and all of a sudden he starts elevating up, like he's in an elevator. Picture an invisible elevator, and Jesus is inside, and he's just being elevated up. It's not like Jesus is playing Superman. He says, up, up, and away, and it's by his own power he's lifting up. This is not what the verb lifting up means. It's a parallel. It's taking up, lifted up, to cause to move upward. It's really implying a supernatural act of God. They must have been in awe to see their master's glory there. So Jesus was lifted up by the power of God into the clouds. So what about those clouds? And a cloud received him out of their sight. A cloud received them out of their sight. Now, clouds play a very significant role in the Bible. In Luke 9, this is the Transfiguration, starting in verse 33. And as these were leaving him, Peter said to Jesus, Master, it is good for us to be here. Let us make 3 tabernacles, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah. Not realizing what he was saying. While he was saying this, a cloud formed and began to overshadow them. and they were all afraid as they entered the cloud. Then a voice came out of the cloud saying, "This is my son, my chosen one. Listen to him." And when the voice had spoken, Jesus was found alone. And they kept silent and reported to no one in those days any of the things which had been seen. And even in the Old Testament, we find many instances of clouds. And here's a couple. In 1 Kings 8:10, excuse me, this is when the ark was brought back into the temple. It happened that when the priest came from the holy place, the cloud filled the house of the Lord, so that the priest could not stand in mystery because of the cloud, for the glory of the Lord filled the house of the Lord. And then Ezekiel, when he started his mission, he had these visions in Ezekiel 1 verse 4. "And as I looked, behold, a storm wind was coming from the north, a great cloud with fire flashing forth continually, and a bright light around it, and in its midst something like a glowing metal in the midst of the fire." So clouds were very significant. So Jesus is being elevated up, being taken up into a cloud, and it says, as they were gazing intently. So picture all these disciples, and there were many more there than the 11. Picture them just gazing and watching Jesus go up, 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 up into the clouds, just like tunnel vision. And when they did this, I can't help but to think maybe some of them are going back and thinking about that transfiguration, and thinking about all the times Jesus was talking about his ascension. But while they were gazing, they never noticed. Behold, two men in white stood beside them. And those two men in white, maybe those are the same angels at Jesus' tomb after he resurrected. Remember in Luke 24:4? Why they were perplexed, because the tomb was empty, right? Why they were perplexed about this? Behold, two men suddenly stood near in dazzling clothing. And then in John 20:12, and she saw two angels in white sitting, one at the head and one at the feet, and where the body of Jesus had been laying. So tomorrow we're going to take up the second coming of Christ, and that's a beautiful thing. And in Acts 1:11, they also said, "Men of Galilee, why do you stand there looking into the sky? Why are you gazing intently into the sky? Don't worry, this Jesus," don't worry, it's my thought, "don't worry, this Jesus, who has been taken up from you into heaven, will come in just the same way as you have watched him go into heaven." And ladies and gentlemen, that is a beautiful thing. See you next time.